Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us from home or here live at Sophie's for the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living's morning meditation this Sunday. So if we could start with just closing our outer eyes, taking a very deep breath that just fills the lungs, expands the rib cage. Breath in, breath out, expel completely all the air in your lungs. Get comfortable. Settle into this moment now. Right here, right now. This morning's meditation is it's from a Lama Rod Owens article, and it's been expanded upon a little bit, but it is titled, "Is It the Apocalypse?" This is a mindfulness meditation, starting out from a place of being witness to current external conditions and the emotions that stir as a result. But we are reminded that all external conditions are a result of yesterday's thought. We will conclude by meditating on breaking through limited beliefs and focusing on the truth of our being, knowing our liberation from turmoil is right where we are. Lama Rod Owens says, "Over the last several years, people have been asking me about what's going on in the largest possible sense, as in, is this the apocalypse? Is the world about to end? What is happening?" Many religions and spiritual paths have literature that helps us to understand such times. In Christian theology, we call it the apocalypse. In Hindu tantric traditions, we call it Kali Yuga. And in Buddhism, we refer to it as the Dark Ages. The term apocalypse literally means an unveiling, where on one hand, truth is being unveiled, on the other hand, we're facing the limitations of our being able to handle it. For example, we've seen the truth of how we have been living together as a society, how we've covered up so many issues and now we can't cover them up anymore. Everything that we've not done in the past is calling us to task now. The rise and endurance of some of our elected officials and many of their followers, spiritually speaking, not politically, feels like the entrance of chaos and the disruption of things we had felt were safe and stable. Now we're seeing that it was never so safe or stable, and we're seeing it up close and personal in our everyday lives. We see chaos with climate change as well, with the increase of natural disasters around the world, with the extinction of many species of plants and animals, with the melting of the polar ice caps. We see it with the pandemic, we see it with war, human tragedies unfolding daily. Naturally, in such times, many of us experience intense suffering, showing up as fear, anger, despair, anxiety, disgust, hate, depression, terror. It's different for each of us. Often we lose the ability to hold a space for that suffering, a space where we have an opportunity to catch our breath and refocus our attention on the truth of our being, underlying all the human outrage. Our rage can be beneficial in helping us to identify that we are hurt, but it can become energy that we respond to habitually, which causes harm for ourselves and others. It is most certainly not the place from which we create a world that works for everyone. It is not a place where our inner peace lives. When we lose the ability to hold a space for suffering, we do things that take a toll on our bodies, our minds, and our relationships. We begin to objectify others. We begin to lose empathy with one another. We begin to lose sight of the greater truth that we are in the mind of God. But the apocalypse doesn't mean the end of the world. It's about the end of a way of thinking, a way of believing, and that can be painful to let go of. That's where the fire and brimstone metaphors come from that basic fear of letting go of the ways that we used to be in order to make space for what's happening next. And that can be terrifying because we don't know what it is. So what then is our work? Let's think about two aspects, spaciousness and self-care. The original teachings of mindfulness introduced a way of paying attention to what's arising in our emotions, our bodies, and minds. You start with a basic acceptance of saying, okay, yeah, things are out of control. You return to the breath. Go within, return to the body, and begin to look at what's happening for you internally. I sometimes meditate on a visual of my higher self, my spiritual self, lovingly looking on at my human crazy self as a parent would observe a child and seeking to understand what the child needs for the crazy to stop. There's no judgment, just a space created to be with this aspect of our humanness, to be with chaos as something that can exist within, yet not be overwhelming force of our being. Our being is created out of divine love, and no amount of human interference can separate us from that love. We can forget, which is natural. Mindfulness meditations will bring us back to remembering. Once you have some clarity about that, when the life force of love calms the suffering, then you can move back into the world in a way that's more stable and sustainable. Mindfulness also helps us to see what we habitually avoid and to get spacious around it. We learn to relate to discomfort instead of bypassing it. There is trauma in our experiences, which is really tough to sit with, but we can learn how to develop a more open relationship to it by being with it more over time. Our work is also self-care. For me, that involves developing a sense of self-love, a sense that I am enough, that I deserve to be happy, that I deserve to be safe. Surrounding ourselves with people who help us remember our goodness, who are advocates for our self-care and self-love, reflect our innermost spiritual beauty back to us. I also remember my ancestors, meditating on the positive qualities that have passed from generation to generation in my family, trying to embody their characteristics of resilience, community focus, and self-care. Self-care as a form of self-preservation is about supporting ourselves so that we're eventually able to lean into engagement with others around us. We sustain ourselves in order to sustain our communities, because what we do for ourselves in love finds its way back into the mainstream as loving collective consciousness. As we give ourselves spaciousness for all of our experience, we allow more space for others around us to have their own experience. Love and compassion are our innermost divine qualities, the wellspring from which we are able to connect with others around us. Living from and expressing the truth of our being has always been our work. Sometimes we need to give ourselves space to remember, to feel, once again, our greatest truth. So we find our footing once again. We bring our peace, our renewed hope and strength to our families and communities with a willingness to help, to do what can be done together. There will be times where human chaos reminds us that no matter how much you try to help those around you, it doesn't mean you're going to save everyone or stop anything in motion. That's part of the apocalypse, the unveiling, that not everyone is going to survive. Our inner work during these times will need to be refreshed repeatedly as outward conditions continue to unfold. Perhaps allow some space to check in with yourself at the end of the day, turning within to see if there's hurt, to see if there's a dark corner that needs a gentle light, making sure that any perceived chaos throughout the day is not roaming freely in our sacred space within. The brilliant thing about these prophecies of apocalypse throughout all faith traditions is that they won't last forever. It's a stage that we're growing through, and grow we must. So let's take some time now, going deeper within, consciousness of our breath, finding a place of sanctuary that gives you room to breathe, room to just be, a place of quiet connection with your deepest spirit. Let's take a look at the path of least resistance for entering this sacred space, unique to each of us. How do you get there? Is it complicated, or is there ease? Is there an easier path that will bring you to the same spot? We know that spirit is never separate from our being, as close and as intimate as our own breath. We've learned that there are triggers that we've allowed to remove us from this space. Let's consciously spend some time this morning discovering the spiritual trigger that brings us right back. A word, perhaps, an affirmation, or a beautiful image that you've created that lands you in that sacred space of your innermost being. So as we gently return our consciousness to our physical bodies, knowing that this is a place that we can return to minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, whatever it takes to find that space within where we can create from that wellspring of peace, that is what we bring to the world around us. And so it is.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living. Whether you are joining us here at Sophie's Grill and Bar this morning, or whether you have invited us into your homes through the power of StreamYard and the wonderful technology that we have available to us, we're very glad that you have joined us. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Dusty Rippelmeyer. I have the honor and the privilege of being this wonderful community spiritual director. The Triangle Center for Spiritual Living is part of a larger organization called Centers for Spiritual Living. We believe that there is one power and presence that is not outside of us, not on a cloud somewhere doling out punishments and favors at whim, but literally a power and presence that is within us and surrounding us. A power and presence that is benevolent and loving and available, always ready, willing, and able to give us the kingdom of heaven here on earth. It is a power and presence that is creative. It has created everything that we see and everything that we do not see. And because we were created in its image and likeness, we too have that ability to be creative. And in fact, we are using that ability each and every moment of every day of our lives. The problem is, if there is a problem, is that we are perhaps using it unconsciously. So what we do is we come together for classes and for services and for social events to remind each other and ourselves who we are, and who we are in the matter of our own lives. And that since we have this creative ability, if we don't like the experience we are having in the moment, we can change it. All we need to do is to think a new thought, have a new belief, let go of the old ones that are no longer serving us, and step into something new, a new intention, a new belief, a new understanding. And our lives can change. We can co-create with the divine a world that actually works for everyone. And so I welcome you here, because the more people understand, the more people really step powerfully into their own lives, it gives everybody permission to do the same in theirs. And when we do that, it just gets bigger and bigger and more expanded and more wonderful. So thank you all. We do have a flower dedication today, and I'm very happy about it. And the flower dedication, for actually one of the first times I think it's ever happened this way, is being given by the flower dedicator herself, the lovely Betty Courier.
Thank you, Dusty. I didn't get around to writing something, and I knew I was going to be here, and it gives me an opportunity to say thank you in person. Thank you to this wonderful community. Thank you for this wonderful philosophy, this way of life. I spent a lot of my life wandering around aimlessly, looking for something, not knowing what it was, until my second husband introduced me to Science of Mind. And it's just been the most wonderful and joyous adventure I could ever be a part of. And so I'm delighted to say thank you today in the form of a flower dedication. But thank you for more than that, from the bottom of my heart, for all of you, for this community, and for this philosophy.
And so what I will say also about Betty, because she didn't mention it herself, and I know she'd be okay with me telling you all, this week is also her birthday week, and she is actually celebrating her 84th year on the planet. So I would love to thank Michelle Love for her beautiful meditation that really deepened the container that our service is unfolding within. Please welcome back to the podium licensed spiritual practitioner Michelle Love.
Thank you, Dusty. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We've got a relatively full house today, which is great. Thank you for coming. Our theme for the year of 2022 is Living Everyday Wonder. Our theme for the month of April is Creativity. Reverend Dusty's talk title today is Dance with the Donkey. What could that be about? I am now going to read this community's purpose statement. This is our reason for being here. Our purpose is to inspire, educate, and empower individuals to experience themselves as unique and individualized expressions of God, the love intelligence that governs the universe. We are committed to not merely a theoretical understanding of our oneness and unity with God, but to consciously practice this truth in our everyday lives. Through celebration, service, study, and fellowship, we are committed to the transformation of our personal lives into being a powerful and beneficial presence on the planet. With the energy of unconditional love, simply, we are here for God, and so it is. So let's take a moment now to close your outer eyes if you'd like to, and we're going to spend just a few minutes centering ourselves, fully arriving, being here now, opening our hearts and minds and allowing the healing sounds of the crystal bowls to just simply wash over you.
attention back into your bodies and back into the room. Good morning. My name is Heather Abbott. I'm a licensed spiritual practitioner here at the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living, and I'm pleased this morning to conduct our Blessing of All Faiths. The Triangle Center for Spiritual Living honors the diversity and threads of truth that run through all spiritual paths, as represented by this ceremony. Please welcome the birthday girl Betty Courier and Dara Ferguson. Christianity is the path of Christ consciousness, love, and forgiveness. Buddhism is the path of compassion and understanding. Judaism is the ethical path of living by sacred law. Baha'i is the path of unity and peace. Islam is the path of submission to the will of God, the highest calling. Confucianism is the path of deliberate tradition. Taoism is the natural way, the path of ultimate reality. Native American practice and shamanic traditions are the paths of primal spirituality. Shintoism is the path of tribal ancestry. Hinduism is the path of knowledge, action, and devotion. Science of mind and spirit is the path of divine principle of love and law. And the heart represents the one heart, the one love that resides at the center of all people and all beings everywhere, with no exceptions. May peace prevail on earth through the followers of all paths. And so it is. Thank you. I invite you once again to close your outer eyes and turn within as I speak a word of blessing on this service today. Recognizing in this moment the divine source that is everywhere present, all of the time. Knowing that source is infinite wisdom, infinite intelligence, creativity itself. I know that it is present here and everywhere in this crisp, beautiful North Carolina morning. And surrounding us, no space that it is not. I know that I am one with that spirit. I am one with that divine love. That creativity created me. And it supports me, fuels me, and funds me in every conceivable way. I know that I am blessed by that unity. I know that as the truth of me, as I know that as the truth of each of the people in this room here today. Each of those that are watching this in real time, all of those that will watch this in the future, and each sentient being on this planet Earth. From that place of unity, I know that this is a good God day, that today's service flows with grace and ease, that we are blessed by this community, by this gathering of souls. I speak a word of blessing on our beautiful, fearless leader, Reverend Dusty, for her care and love that she shows us, by her commitment and by her willingness to be a hollow bone for Spirit to speak through. I speak a word of blessing upon Cindy Johnson as she comes forth with her gift of music and song to lighten our hearts and to bring joy into this service today. I speak a word of blessing on Ava as she handles the AV duties today. So grateful for her service and for the technology that allows us to be including all of those that are at home and all of those that will watch this in the future. I speak a word of blessing on Michelle for her beautiful meditation that set the container for today, and for her presence on the pulpit and in our community. And I speak a word of blessing on our community. This center, this Triangle Center for Spiritual Living, its presence in the world, working towards a world that works for everyone. I'm so grateful to be a part of this community and grateful for the work that it does in the world, the work that it does in this city, this small area of the world. I'm also grateful for Sophie's to provide this space for us to gather in person each Sunday. I know today's service will unfold with grace, and that Dusty's message will be received with open hearts and open ears, and we will each receive from her message today exactly what we need for this week going forward to strengthen our bonds with Spirit and to open our hearts to allow a little more love, a little more kindness to touch us each and every day. I'm grateful, and I ask you to anchor this for ourselves and for each other by saying with me, "And so it is." Amen. Thank you. The reading for today is from The Art of Uncertainty. Author Dr. Dennis Merritt Jones, in his book, The Art of Uncertainty, talks about watching a mother bird lay 4 eggs in a nest outside of his home. He spoke about watching them grow. Finally, the day came when they would be forced to leave the comfort and the safety of the nest they had outgrown. The largest of the 4 chicks stepped out of the nest and onto the ledge for the first time, looking down at the ground some 8 feet below. He stood perfectly still for a moment, as if sizing things up, and began to experiment with stretching its wings, flapping them so frenetically that he nearly fell off the ledge. He waddled several feet back and forth on the ledge, as if to try to decide whether he wanted to return to the nest or take the pending plunge. Then quickly, as if not wanting to give himself the opportunity to change his mind, he came to the edge and once again began wildly flapping his wings, intentionally leaning over until he reached the point of no return, simply surrendering to the pull of gravity. He instantly began to fly around. Then the second chick did the same as the first, followed by the third. But the 4th chick was a different story. The runt of the bunch warily waddled to the edge of the ledge and looked down. Then he turned and briskly waddled back to the nest. There he sat for a good 10 minutes, trying to muster up the courage to follow his siblings. Hearing the festive chirping of his siblings in the grove must have been all the encouragement he needed. He bounced out of the nest, came running to the edge, and without even looking down, flapped his little wings wildly as he leaned over to a point where he had no choice. It was either fly or fail. Naturally, he flew. The only thing required of the birds to soar to freedom and a whole new life is the willingness to come to the edge of everything they have ever known and to lean into the mystery. This is what was required of Jesus beginning on Palm Sunday and continuing throughout the week before Easter. It is also what is required of each of us. And now, the beautiful Cindy Johnson.
Thank you, Heather. Your beloved calls you here today to ask you for this dance. What will you say? Are you going to throw the chance away? Or do you hear the music? I know you've got a lot of things to do, but I think the world could turn a time or two without all your precious plans, and you could stop to hear the music in your heart, in your heart. Maybe you should give your mind a rest and put its main assumption to the test. Just let go and see who leads the best, and surrender to the music. Maybe you don't need to understand. Maybe these are steps that can't be planned. Funny how your feet know where to land when you listen to the music in your heart. Your beloved calls you here today to ask you for this dance. What will you say? Are you going to throw this chance away? Or listen to the music? Or listen to the music in your heart, in your heart.
Absolutely beautiful, Cindy. Thank you so very much. I called her earlier in the week and asked her to do that song for me because I love it, and I thought it was absolutely appropriate for today. Your beloved asks you to dance. What will you say? Such a beautiful, beautiful song by a beautiful singer-songwriter named Cortana, if you'd like to hear any of her other music. And my gratitude goes out to Rebecca Laughlin because she introduced me to her many years ago, and for that I've been eternally grateful, because whenever I need a shot of sacred feeling tone, she's one of the musicians that I go to. So thank you very much, Rebecca. And thank you very much, Cindy, for doing it, and for doing it so beautifully. Thank you. Give her another hand. So I believe that this week is spiritually significant to all of us. The nexus of all of the various faith celebrations that happen during this week come together to really afford us the opportunity to use some really, or to learn to use, and then to use some really powerful tools to honor our own creative journeys and to become ever more available to Spirit. So the divine itself shines through all spiritual paths in unique ways, right? We've spoken about this during our blessing of all faiths. And the lessons of all of these weeks' celebrations really speak to just how rich this time, this week, can be for all of us, individually and collectively. Ramadan began last week. Now, Muslims honor Ramadan by fasting, and they fast from food, from gossiping, from arguing, and from lying. For a whole month, y'all. A whole month. So it's a time for self-reflection and a time for spiritual growth. Ultimately, this kind of fasting is all about gaining a greater God consciousness, about stepping into a really constant state of awareness of the power and presence of the divine that is within us. Today is Palm Sunday. Lovely poem today. And it marks the start of what is called the Holy Week. Later in the week, we look forward to Good Friday, to Passover this year, and Easter Sunday. Now, each of them, in their own unique way, inspire us to grow, to evolve, and to transform. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I really happen to love this particular week because of the fact that it is so rich. I don't like the candy so much. I mean, those Peeps have a shelf life of like 1 billion years, right? And then they stick maple into a perfectly good chocolate egg. Why would you want to ruin it like that? But I'll tell you, other than that, it is so spiritually rich that we have to honor it. We have to honor this time period. The theme for the month of April is creativity. And the truth is that the creative journey often means leaving the predictable, or leaving the life that we have always known, in order to really walk a road that is less traveled. Recognizing that our old ways must fall away, we choose an adventure of creative discovery and wonder. This week, and the lessons surrounding this week, all of the celebrations that the different faith traditions have, really show us how we can do this. Good Friday, coming up this Friday, is all about letting go. It's all about letting go of the things that no longer serve us, and really stepping into the possibility of the old dying to make room for the new. To leave our old life behind and step into a whole new way of living. Historically, Passover really commemorates the liberation of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. And symbolically, this idea of passing over means really moving from one state of consciousness into a new state of consciousness. Rising in awareness, we transcend the mortal and step into the I am. You're beginning to create from the I am consciousness. Easter Sunday is really all about rising powerfully into this new way of being in our lives. Now, ever since I first started walking on this path, I have always loved to hear stories from the Bible being spoken about from a metaphysical perspective. What I realized is that the stories are the stories of every man and every woman in his or her journey, his or her spiritual journey. The stories are the stories of every man and every woman's growth, or mentally and spiritually, and the stories are the stories of all of the obstacles that we all meet at some point in time along the way. By looking at the stories metaphysically, they really show us how to commune with the unseen power and presence that we call the divine. That unseen power and presence that is within us. We look at the stories metaphysically in order to really be able to understand them and to actually experience their relevance in our own lives. That they are just as relevant to us today as they were thousands of years ago when they were first told. And over time, as I read the stories, I began to realize that they really do have something to do with me. And because they have something to do with me, that means that they have something to do with each and every single one of you and each and every single one of you out there. They are relevant to us, important to us, significant to us. So today is Palm Sunday, as I said earlier, and over the years we have talked about Palm Sunday again and again and again. But I believe that we can hear, that we can learn from the stories each and every single time that we hear them, because each and every single time that we hear them, we are in a different place in our consciousness. We are in a different place in our lives with a different understanding, different spiritual ears, different spiritual eyes. And so they land on us differently. So we're going to talk about it again a little bit today. And for those of you who grew up like I did in a religious void, I'm going to just talk a little bit about what those events were. So on this Sunday, clearly it wasn't called Palm Sunday then, but on this Sunday, about 30, around the year 30, Jesus entered into the city of Jerusalem. Now he entered the city with thousands of other people who were celebrating Passover. Now, one of thousands of people, you would think that perhaps he could go by unnoticed. But the truth of it is that he wasn't just one of the 1,000 people that were walking into the city of Jerusalem on that day. The truth of the matter is that he was already known far and wide for all of the great works that he had already been doing around the land. And not only was he respected for those great works, he was also really respected and admired for his insightful and really loving sermons that he gave. They were all hoping that he was the promised Messiah that was coming, that would establish a new kingdom of peace and prosperity for everyone. So they celebrated him by cutting down palm branches and laying them on the road in front of them, or by waving them wildly and cheerfully with shouts of Hosanna. Culturally at the time, this was really a show of great respect, and so they greatly respected him. Now, after his arrival, either immediately or perhaps the next day, depending upon which account you are reading, Jesus cleansed the temple of Jerusalem by violently driving out the money changers and other merchants that were associated with the temple commerce. Now, this act of turning over their table and violently driving them out resulted in the temple authorities seeking to arrest him as a threat to public order and to a danger to the peace. I'm going to say the peace between the Jews and Rome. Now they succeeded in bribing his disciple Judas to betray him, and they were able to arrest him in the Garden of Gethsemane, leading to his trial by Pontius Pilate, and ultimately his crucifixion on Good Friday as a traitor to Rome. Now, whether you believe that all of these are literal historic events or or whether you believe that they're purely symbolic, or whether you land somewhere in between on that spectrum, if you're here, if you are watching out there, in all probability you do understand on some level that this is not just about then, just about Jesus, but really an internal experience. And if you're not so sure about that, you're at least willing to hear about the possibility of it. So the events in the marketplace when Jesus overturned the money changers' table and violently drove them out of the temple represented the cleansing of our body, mind, and spirit of old habit patterns, the cleansing of negative thoughts, and the cleansing of unconscious intentions. It's ridding ourselves of old tapes and obsolete beliefs that no longer serve us, leading to inner transformation, preparing each of us to really step into our highest and best selves. A little bit different than the literal understanding, yes? Now, it is a turning away from our attachment to the human view that is offered to us from our perception, from our human senses, and really being able to step into and embrace a deeper, more spiritually grounded, more spiritually mature and aware way of living our lives. Booting out the money changers is merely creating a shift in our self-perception so that we can truly understand what is important to us on a really deep soul level, and then to being able to really bring it all into alignment. Another idea is that the temple represents oneness, a deep and abiding connection and communion with the divine itself, while the money changers in the temple represent our belief in separation. So in a perfect world, right, this would make sense, in a perfect world, communion and oneness should be the only purpose in a temple. Yeah? So it should be the only purpose in a temple, and the invitation is for it to be the only purpose in our hearts and in our minds and in our lives. More than anyone in history, I believe that Jesus stood in his oneness. Really, his whole purpose was being an example of how we can do this too, of how we can powerfully stand in our oneness, not only with the divine, but with each other. Jesus rode into Jerusalem that Palm Sunday on the colt of a donkey. Now, the donkey metaphysically represents peace, and the colt represents humility. And it represents humility because it had never been ridden before, because it had never been used yet for any secular or worldly purposes. It represented the innocence that we arrived on the planet as, that blank slate. It is said that Jesus rode the colt of the donkey so that the scriptures or the prophecies would be fulfilled. So this humble arrival into town was certainly not the glorious, triumphant way that the crowd would have expected or would have wanted him to arrive into town, but it is the way that he consciously chose to do it. It was the way that he consciously surrendered to do it. He turned away from what the crowd expected of him and did what he knew was absolutely right for him to do. Now, my guess is that some people in the crowd probably thought that he should be riding in on a horse, right? Because a horse is so much more majestic. Although don't ask Cindy, she's kind of partial to donkeys, she told us earlier today. So, however, we have to remember that Jesus was riding into Jerusalem. And Jerusalem really represents metaphysically the high country, or a higher consciousness, the Christ consciousness. So he was riding that day into Christ consciousness. And so the donkey represented sure-footedness. It wasn't going to be all fancy. It wasn't going to be prancing or strutting around, right? But instead, it knew what it was doing. And it knew where it was going. And so that is why Jesus chose the donkey over a more fancy horse. Now, while the donkey is persistent and can really endure and travel the rocky and broken road, metaphysically, the donkey can also represent that aspect of ourselves that is stubborn, that is untrainable, that is undisciplined. Even though, I'm going to say it again, even though we know that what we resist persists, and that it's exhausting and overwhelming and oh so frustrating to continue to keep doing so, it is that aspect of ourselves that would rather battle, that would rather resist, that would rather deny what is, rather than to surrender and dance with the donkey. I know you know what I'm talking about. That aspect of ourselves that would rather do that than surrender. Palm Sunday represents more than Jesus on a donkey riding into Jerusalem while wildly cheering fans are adoringly throwing palm branches onto the road in front of him. Palm Sunday represents each of us on our journeys to peace and fulfillment. Represents all of us. In life's continuum, right, over the course of our life, our time here on earth, we will experience both sacred moments of discovery and dark nights of the soul. Both of them. We will all experience that. The valleys of death and desperation are meant to be passed through, not lived in. Rather than deny, fight with, or abandon his donkey, Jesus rode on it. Rode on that donkey into Christ consciousness. Can you get that, right? When we accept what is, we are free to dance with what is. Challenges, people, or issues become part of the creative dance, not a reason to give up. They become part of that creative dance. Now, when we dance with our donkeys, resistance fades away. And what was once our shadow, that was once our issue, that was once our problem, that was once our challenge, now becomes something that actually blesses us. Sometimes we will be wild, and sometimes we will be so graceful. There will be times of great choreography and order, and there will be times of chaos and creative confusion. Dancing with the donkey is ultimately a dance with spirit. When the beloved asks you to dance, what will you say? And it's a dance in all of its forms and all of its expressions and all of its experiences. Remember, God is everywhere at all times. So the invitation is to be willing to be inspired and grown by all of our donkeyness. and all of our perfectly imperfect experiences in our lives. Metaphysically, Jerusalem represents our abiding consciousness of peace, while Jesus represents the Christ consciousness within each of us. Jesus' ride into Jerusalem is about our I am nature, knowing that peace is always present. That peace is always present, like the sun behind the clouds. Peace is always present, and it simply waits for our choice to enter into it. I think that this day represents our willingness to find and step into our transformation. The events of Palm Sunday really speak to listening to that still small voice, the one that is always seeking to be expressed through and as us. The one that speaks to us of about what we need to do and who we need to be in order to transform, in order to really evolve into our highest and best. It takes willingness to be a channel for Spirit. It takes faith to step forward in possibility and newness and discovery. The events of the day speak to knowing who we are beyond a shadow of a doubt, standing firmly in our faith, being willing to turn away from the world of form and to do what we know we have come here to do. It takes courage and curiosity to explore our dreams and to explore our own uniqueness. It takes courage and curiosity to really understand who we are, who we really are as spiritual beings having a human incarnation. The events of the day invite us to step out in faith. Not faith in something outside of ourselves, but faith in the power and presence within us. Faith in the power of the law and our ability to use it, and faith in a universe that is always for us and never against us. The events speak to us about moving through our fear and letting go of any resistance that we might have to our own transformation. Here at the Triangle Center for Spiritual Living, we believe that Jesus was a master teacher, speaking to us not only in parables and stories, but also teaching to us through the way that he lived his own life. Through the events of Palm Sunday, Jesus showed us the truth about who we are to be and what we are to do to really transform our lives, and not simply try to move about the external pieces of our lives expecting to have a different outcome, but to actually transform ourselves from the inside out, as within, so without. According to the Bible, when Jesus rode into Jerusalem on that day, he knew that he was going to die on Friday. Now, whether he knew it or not, the bottom line is that he had to lean into the mystery of it all. And like the little birds in the story that Heather read earlier today, he had to lean into the unknown. He did not flinch. He did not turn away. He did not turn back. He surrendered his fears and did it anyway. Jesus knew that failing to fulfill the prophecies would be to put too much stock in his own ideas or to be swayed by the expectations of others. And so he chose to turn away from both of them. He chose instead to listen to his own intuition, the still small voice of God, the prophet within. He surrendered to it, and this surrender was an act of the deepest faith that one can possibly imagine. And this is what is being asked of us too. For us to do this, we first need to remember who and what we are. Spiritual beings having a human incarnation. We need to recognize our true self and be willing to let go of fear, doubt, and worry. We must let go of our own expectations and the expectations of others for us. Put aside every concept of meaning that we have ever made and thought to be true about ourselves and our circumstances. Put them aside. We have to do this in order to open to all that we have never even imagined was possible in a universe of unlimited possibilities. We have to do this in order to express the goodness that wants to be expressed in the only way that each of us can uniquely express it. It is saying yes to the Christ consciousness within us. Now, this isn't always easy. Often we do not listen to this still small voice, the voice of vision, and we wind up being pushed by pain. Many of us hear the voice and rebel because, well, we don't like being told what to do. We often question what we thought that we heard, believing that we could not have heard it right. It could not possibly be right because it doesn't feel like it's attainable. Because from where we are standing, looking through our human eyes, we can't see a way that we can possibly do that. Often we second guess ourselves and we get caught up in the hows. And we unearth the seeds that we have previously planted. Often when choosing a divinely inspired way of being, our family and our friends, naysayers who shout out negative comments filled with fear and doubt, meet us with resistance. The crowds that welcome Jesus with palm branches and cries of Hosanna turned on him by the end of the week. They even asked for his death. He did what he was called to do anyway. Today on Palm Sunday, I ask each of us to ask ourselves, am I willing to remember who I am every moment of every day? Am I willing to humbly do that which is mine to do? Am I willing to let go of my fears, doubts, and worries and stand firmly grounded within my inner peace? Am I willing to listen to that still small voice of the divine within me? Today on Palm Sunday, we can choose to dance with the donkey. Turning away from our attachment to the view offered by our human perceptions and instead embrace a deeper, more spiritually mature and aware way of living our lives. We can choose to dance with the donkey, turning away from what the crowd expects of us and doing what we know is right for us. Letting go of that part of us that is stubborn. That part of us that would rather battle, resist, and deny what is in order to surrender and actually grow and evolve and transform. We can choose to dance with the donkey, and rather than tame them or make them conform to what we believe they should be, and discover the gifts to be found in them, and remember that regardless of the appearances, regardless of our experiences in the moment, regardless of the challenges that are presenting us in the moment, peace is always present. So, what is it going to be? Stumbling blocks or stepping stones? Tantrums or the tango? As always, the choice is up to us. And so it is. And so it is. And so I just invite us to turn within, to allow ourselves to return to that space so beautifully created by Heather in her invocation, to expand our awareness of that presence, that light of the divine, that Christ consciousness that is within us, to really feel it embodying each and every single cell of our body, so that we know beyond a shadow of a doubt who we really are. The power and presence of the divine. I know that is who I am. Of that I have no doubt. And just as I know that I am so sure about it for myself, I am absolutely just as sure about it for each and every person here at Sophie's, for each and every person within the sound of my voice, for each and every person that will hear this later, for each and every sentient being on the planet. We are all divine emanations of the divine, ambassadors of God's presence on the planet. That is why we are here, why we have come, each with our own unique and individualized way of expressing that divinity. And it is from that place of unity that I speak these words about and for each of us this morning, truly knowing that there is that within us that knows how to live our life this way, living our lives open, available, not restricted, not tied down, not cut off from our goodness, but truly open to it, willing and able to allow it to express through and as us. And I claim ease and grace for us around powerfully stepping into that, using the lessons of all of these various faith traditions, beginning today on Palm Sunday and continuing out throughout the Holy Week into Good Friday, Passover, and Easter Sunday itself, allowing all of those lessons to inform us of how we are to be, letting Jesus, whose example is the best example of living a spiritual life that we could ever encounter, letting that example inform us of who we are to be and how we are to live our lives. I claim and know for each of us that there is a powerful yes within us, a yes that is just wanting to come out, and that when the beloved asks us to dance, that yes will powerfully come out of us, and our lives will be forever changed. And I'm so grateful to know this truth, so grateful to speak these words, so grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes. And so I speak them and I release them into that law, fully expecting their manifestation, letting go and letting God be God. And I invite each of us to anchor this prayer, these words, for ourselves, for each other, for our community, and for the entire world, simply by saying, and so it is, and so it is. Amen. Thank you all so very much. It is now time for our conscious giving. The Triangle Center for Spiritual Living is sustained by the giving of our time, talent, and treasure. This is the time every week when we offer financial support to assist this community to be a beacon of light and love for ourselves and for others. Together we affirm that the truth that today's offering lifts this spiritual community, prospers the one giving, and contributes to the experience of sufficiency on the planet. There are several ways that you can give. They are here on the screen, and I believe that you can see them at home. Visit our website at www.trianglecsl.org. Text the word GIVE using the following number, 919-230-8445, or you can always mail your gift to our office, PO Box 4062, Cary, North Carolina 27519. I invite everyone to place your hand over your heart, and we will do our offering affirmation in a call and response. I live in an abundant universe that blesses and prospers my life. I live in an abundant universe that blesses and prospers my life. I give with gratitude, knowing God is my source. I give with gratitude, knowing God is my source. And so it is. And so just before we invite the lovely Cindy to return back to her piano, we have just a quick announcement for March financials that we are started to do last month, and we will be doing monthly on the second Sunday of every month. So our incoming revenue this month was $22,240.41. This reflects 2 large donations, one for a little bit over $10,000 and one for $2,500, both one-time donations. Our outgoing expenses were $9,896.81. The net income was $12,343.60 for the month of March. Indeed, we are abundant. Our new bank account as of today is $56,778.86. We are prosperous. Thank you all so very much for your generosity. And now keep your hands a-clapping for the amazing Cindy Johnson.
It is my pleasure to be here with these wonderful folks, and it's so good to have real people in the room. So, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Is that it? There's a voice that's softly whispering inside my head, telling me I'm gonna be alright. It keeps saying, let yourself be led where you are led. Don't hold back, don't give up a fight. It tells me trust the wind, breathe the air. There's a place you're meant to be, and you're already there. Open up your heart and let life in. Know that you can always trust the wind. When the world starts doing things that I don't understand, and I search my soul to find a reason why, in the dark of night I feel somebody take my hand and tell me you don't even have to try. For you can trust the wind, breathe the air, and know that there are helping hands around you everywhere. Open up your heart and let life in. Know that you can always trust the wind. Dreams have wings, thoughts take flight. All good things are streaming toward us every day. They hear our prayers, they know the way. I'm gonna trust the wind, breathe the air, let it take me on its wings and carry me somewhere. I'll open up my heart and let life in. I know wherever breezes blow, wherever winding rivers flow, I'm going where I need to go. I can trust the wind.
Beautiful, Cindy. Woo. Spirit and the incarnation that we show up in our humanness on this human plane. I'm so grateful for our freedom and for our choice on a daily basis to choose to surrender, choose to dance. I'm so grateful for our ability to step into that ever-present peace, to dwell upon the perfect example that Jesus set for us. I bless our week ahead, that we are able to stay in awareness, to say yes to that still small voice, and remember who and whose we are. For this and so much more, I am grateful, and I ask you to anchor this with me by saying, "And so it is."
And so it is.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you to Michelle and Heather. And thank you to the beautiful Cindy Johnson for her magnificent music today. And thank you for all of you that are here at Sophie's, all of you at home. I love you all. Have a magnificent week. And in the words of Leanne Womack, I hope you'll dance.